Good afternoon, everyone. And as you know, my name is Zenzi Sewa, and this is Spiritual Infinity. And my guest today is speaking from Romania. Her name is Chris Nielsen, and she's going to talk about her spiritual journey, how it started, how she got on the road to connect to her spirituality, and of course, what she's doing today, and how we, if you want to, connect with her. So without much ado, and it's dark over there because we're in Europe. So here it's although it's getting lighter because we've gone through the winter solstice. So bit by bit it's getting lighter. It's not so dark today, but it's raining. It's a good thing. The earth needs it. So without much ado, Chris Nielsen in Romania. Hello.
Hello, and thank you so much for your invitation. It's such an honor to speak with you because you have such a large array of wonderful guests. It's such an honor to be among them.
Thank you. So, Chris, as you know, we're here to hear your story, how you began your spiritual journey and where it's led you today. So I give the platform, but you might see me go like this, and it's that I want to answer questions. So, but for now, please, let's hear about your journey.
So my spiritual journey started somewhere about 13 years ago when I had around 25 years old, and I had some important physical problems connected with my liver, with my gallbladder, and so on. And I couldn't find a clear root, a cause to my physical problems, because in this lifetime I had, let's say, quite a common, if I can say common, because nothing is really common, but I have quite a normal, let's say, nothing special happened in my childhood or during the years when I was a teenager. So I couldn't find a particular important emotional cause to my physical problems, which were quite bothering at that time. And I had the chance to meet a very important therapist specialized in Reiki and other bioenergy therapies. And he started to work with me, and I started slowly to notice some important improvements. And he also started to connect my emotional problems with my physical pains. But I still had this kind of struggle because I couldn't really find such important traumas. Of course, that like any human being, my life was not perfect, because there doesn't exist such a perfect and life story, and everything is not like in a Hollywood movie. But I didn't have important traumas which could explain my physical problems. And then he told me that I might have some problems which came far from behind from other previous past lives. At that moment, I didn't know anything about past lives. I didn't even know if I thought that this was real or not. I never asked myself up to that moment in my life. Mm-hmm. But what is very important, and this is something that I'm telling for all the people who listen to us right now, is that I was very open-minded. I was very flexible. And I think that these two characteristics, to be open-minded and flexible, are very important in order to discover the most important and interesting things in our lives. So I didn't say a no. It was a yes or a maybe or a perhaps. And two very important things started in that period of my life. First of all, the therapist told me that I might have the opportunity to join some of his classes, because he also used to teach about Reiki and how we can work with our own energies in order to heal ourselves. And I started to go to his courses, and I was simply fascinated by everything that I was discovering about the connection between different parts of our body, the connection between the energy and the physical body, the connection between our emotions and our energy and our body, and so on. And I started to have slowly a holistic view about our being. And then I kept on searching the causes that were behind my own physical problems. And let's say God, the universe, or it depends on how each of us interprets things, brought me to one of the therapists in my country who had specialized at Michael Newton's Institute in the United States of America. Michael Newton being one of the greatest therapists and pioneers in researching the period between lives or afterlife. He wrote some very, very interesting books. He founded an institute in the United States which teaches nowadays great important truths about what happens to a human being between incarnations and so on. So everything that he wrote and he researched and that he taught is a great legacy. Unfortunately, he died. He was quite old, and he died 7 or 8 years ago. But he left such a great spiritual inheritance here on earth. And I started to do this past life and between lives regression therapy in order to find out answers about myself. And then I felt like a Pandora box was simply opening in front of myself, because I started to receive so many important answers from beyond, which were exactly the missing pieces from the puzzle, which I kept on searching for years and years. And I started to understand exactly why I had certain emotional reactions, certain physical problems, because I discovered very important traumas in past lives, which were not solved. And although my current life looked apparently quite peaceful and quite normal, the traumas were behind, and I started to work upon them. And then a few years later, I had this chance to also train myself as a therapist near the Past Life Regression Academy based in the United Kingdom, and which was founded by the great author and therapist named Andy Tomlinson. And I had this great opportunity to study, and I was almost 3 years under their supervision, and it was such an extraordinary inner journey, because when you want to become a therapist, first of all, you begin with working upon yourself. Mm-hmm. You always have to eliminate your inner blockages in order to be, let's say, as clean as possible, in order to being able to work with another person. And moreover, this is also a great way to understand very deeply and in a profound way the therapy which you are, of course, learning to apply on other people. And this journey into past lives led me one day to discovering a few, let's say, important characters. I don't know how to name them. So up to this moment, in so many years, I explored about 35 past lives that I had. And out of these 35 past lives, about 6 or 7 are, let's say, quite famous. When I mean famous, I mean either I was known from a public point of view, or my life partner was a famous person and I was his or her wife or her husband, if I was a man or a woman. And one of these, let's say, famous character, although I don't like very much this way of putting things, was the great classical music composer Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky. And when I discovered this past identity of mine, after one of the sessions working on the traumas connected with this past life, I felt a very strong, I would say a very strong inner urge to write a book about this experience. And that's how my book, being Pyotr Ilyich, was born. So it was born out of my own past life regression sessions. And all this work meant 1 year and a half of doing therapy and then preparing all the materials for writing the book, and then another year and a half for transcribing everything that was recorded, because each regression therapy is audio recorded. And then I had almost 100 hours of audio recording, which I transcribed word for word. And then, of course, I had a huge amount of text, but which I had to arrange a little from, let's say, from a literary point of view, because the text had so many repetitions. Sometimes, of course, there were some grammar mistakes, and also because when you are in trance, you don't have a chronological order. No. So in order for yes, of course.
Sorry, I'm going to stop you there.
Yes.
Because I'd like to go back a bit.
Yes.
Because I want to go back into your childhood, because you said it all started because you had these different health issues and you suffered from that. These health issues, were you born with them, or were they things that you developed within your childhood and, you know, they got worse and worse?
I think I was born with them, because I was a child who was quite frequently ill. I didn't have, fortunately, I didn't have a cancer or something which was very, very, let's say, serious illness to cope with, fortunately. But I was all the time, I had all kind of illnesses connected with the respiratory system, first of all. All the time I had bronchitis, sinusitis, and so on, pneumonia, and so on. I also had a lot of problem with my digestion. I was a very sensitive child who couldn't eat a lot of things, and when I entered into my teens, I started to have problems connected with let's say with the reproductive system and so on, and it was not very easy to go pregnant, and so I also had health issues which didn't translate into an important disease, but a lot of problems and sensitivities with many parts of my physical body.
Okay, so you were born with different things, and through your childhood you suffered with poor health, and you went into your teenage life with the same thing. Till eventually, I suppose in your early 20s, you decided to look deeper and to see all these things culminating, something is wrong. And so what you're saying is that you, through therapy, and they started to look at some of this could be psychological, that's affecting your health. When you got to that stage, because there's some things they can connect it to psychological illnesses. What were those that were psychological illnesses?
I didn't have a psychological illness.
Okay.
I had no psychological illness. I only had some, let's say, emotional blockages that I felt into my life. For example, it was quite difficult for me. I mean, it took a long time to find a life partner. I was almost all the time alone. And I didn't really understood why up to the moment when I was under trials, and I understood that I have a very, very strong connection and commitment, let's say, with the person who is now my husband.
Yes.
And to some extent, let's say that to some extent, I promised to him that we will always be together. So that's why although I told to myself that I wanted a relationship, I couldn't approach other men, but I was not conscious about it up to the moment when I entered into regression therapy. I think that in my case, it was easier to see that I was missing the root of my problems, especially because I didn't have any important issues in my current life, because my life was, let's say, quite clean and common and without any important traumas. So that's what pushed me to search further and further in order to find answers to my questions. And I also had a very important problem in finding my professional path. And this is one of the main reasons which led me to the life as Tchaikovsky. And I think that, generally speaking, all the time when people have a problem, a physical, emotional problem, it doesn't matter what kind of problem, there is always a very logic cause. Sometimes people think that when they have a phobia or they have an inner blockage, or they have a nightmare and so on, sometimes they think that things might be out of their imagination, or might be something that happens by chance, and they ignore their symptoms and all the signs that the life sends to them.
Yes.
But from my own experience, both as a client and as a therapist, I say nowadays that nothing that you ever feel in your life is by chance. Everything has a very important cause, a very important root in yourself. It's just that sometimes you remember the cause if you have the zero moment, let's say, in your childhood or in this current life, in your youth and so on. And sometimes you don't remember it because it's hidden in the subconscious mind. But there is always a cause.
Okay. Now, you said when you were regressed, you connected to Tchaikovsky?
Yes.
Okay. So when you connected to Tchaikovsky, you said that a lot of things made sense. What were the things that made sense by connecting to Tchaikovsky that connected in this lifetime? What were the things?
Yes, a very, very interesting question. So first of all, it was my professional path, because in this current life, I always struggled to find my way. I am working, so my main job, even nowadays, which I'm practicing for almost 20 years, is as a communication specialist in the artistic field. So I worked a lot of time for opera houses and for philharmonic orchestras, always promoting classical music, ballet, and so on. So I always felt like home in this artistic field, and I always been very attracted by ballet, by classical music, and so on. But I always felt that I was, to some extent, in the right place, but not in the right position. I always felt that, to some extent, doing promotion and marketing and so on was not really fulfilling myself, and that I wanted something more creative. And when I discovered my past identity as Tchaikovsky, I understood exactly that I chose in this life to work, to continue his professional path and to work in the same artistic field with ballet dancers and music. But I have a different professional orientation, which doesn't fulfill me anymore because I'm not creating anymore. And I felt and I felt this important frustration that I carried into myself all these years, and I understood where it came from, and why I chose this different professional path. And
Right.
this was one.
Let me stop you there, because I'm hearing that you've had frustration, although you're in that industry, but still it's not, you're still not feeling that it's quite what you want. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, being Tchaikovsky, playing, and I understand that, because when I was young, I also played the piano, and I did my exams at the Royal Academy and the Royal College of Music. So pianoforte is my thing.
Wow.
And Tchaikovsky, Beethoven was my favorite to play. So I understand that music. So what was it, although you were in that field of classical music, but you felt that you're still not there? So what is it that now through that turned you to where you want to be? Are you playing now?
No, I'm not. It was far too late to start playing. I was more than 25 years old.
Okay.
No. But I found all my answers by connected with other past lives, because right now I'm simply perceiving all my past lives, let's say, like the different chapters of the same big book of the soul, which is my spiritual path. And I think this applies, of course, to all of us. So I'm not seeing right now my past lives as completely different lives. I'm seeing all the connections and the bonds and the links, which are very closely
intertwined.
Intertwined, yes, thank you. One with the others, and I found my answers regarding my professional path in other previous lives, because what I discovered in a very interesting way about my own soul is that during the last thousands of years on Earth, I chose all the time two kind of professional paths, let's say. Either I am an artist, and I had lives in almost all the important arts, in music, in painting, sculpture, in movies, and so on. Or I'm choosing all the time a spiritual path. I have I have many past lives as a monk. I was a Buddhist monk in the Himalayas. I was a Christian monk. I was a Catholic monk, Orthodox monk. I was one of the monks who raised the first church in Italy, besides Saint Francis de Assisi, for example. And I'm also very keen on everything that is connected with religion, spirituality, and the soul, and the deep journey of the soul. And this is why my current life, to some extent, blends the two ways. So I am with one foot in the artistic field and with the other foot in the spiritual field. So I'm trying to mix the two pathways in this life.
So, Chris, you told us Tchaikovsky was one of the characters you were in a past life. Can you tell us what else you were in a past life? Just a few.
Yes, I never went public about this, but just in order to answer your question, one of my past lives was also connected with music, but not through myself, but through my husband. It's something less known internationally. It's rather known in my native country. So one of the most important composers in our country, who studied in Vienna at the time and lived in the 19th century, lived Romeo and Juliet love story, let's say, in his life. And because of this life story, unfortunately, he died very, very young. And I was his Juliet, let's say. So I was his lover in that lifetime. So I was not directly myself, let's say, famous, but he was famous. I also lived the life as the Spanish architect Antonio Gaudi, who raised the Sagrada Familia Cathedral in Spain, for example. And I have other important lives, but why I'm not sharing, generally speaking, publicly this thing is because, first of all, I don't think that when we speak about therapy, the fact of being famous or not is important. It's not important at all. So I discovered these things, but when I decided to write this book was because Tchaikovsky's life was extremely emotionally rich, and it touched so many important topics that affect all of us nowadays. And I will give a few examples. The inner child, the idea of family karma and psychogenealogy. So what we do carry from our family, and we repeat the same behavior patterns. Depression, impossible love stories, the relationship with the divine, the problems with accepting your own body, the problems with your relationship with yourself, so what we call self-love nowadays, the relationship with your higher self, and so there were a lot of course, creativity and how his ideas came into being. And I thought that this story was incredibly rich in let's say spiritual lessons that might help any of us. So the reason why I decided to write this book was, on one hand, to offer a very intimate and very vivid portrait of who Tchaikovsky was as a man, not as an artist. And especially because
he was quite complex. He was quite complex.
He was very complex, and especially because I offer such an intimate and inner point of view, and he had such a great, enormous sensitivity, and I thought that it was very important to let people know him from inside, let's say. But I think that even more important than this was the second and more profound layer of the book, which is the spiritual one, because during a trance, you receive so many answers from the world beyond. It doesn't matter if you call them angels, spiritual guides, your higher self, the divine, but you receive so many answers which help you to understand why you live a certain situation in a particular life. What were your lessons to learn? What was your life mission? And so on. And I thought that all these answers surpassed my past personality as Tchaikovsky, and there were answers so rich of lessons that I felt on almost sacred duty to pass this book on, because it's a book about any of us. Any of us feels to some extent the sorrows, the desperation, the loneliness. He had a very important fear of abandonment, which rooted in his childhood, and he had also problems with, let's say, his homosexuality and so on. And I'm explaining all the spiritual and deep meanings behind these happenings, and I'm explaining all of this from a high vibration point of view. So not from this lower scandal point of view, which are usually seeing into our world. So I thought that this was my sacred duty to pass a story not only about a great composer, but about a man, which might serve us as an example for any of us and for the problems that we have.
Okay. No, I agree with you 100%. My reason for asking you just for a few more, and you're quite right, it's not about the being famous. It was just to for people to understand, here you are, you don't Tchaikovsky and the others which are in the same line of music, entertainment, of that side. And here you are on another side with the spirituality, with the monks and all. And it's nice for people to realize that in what affects their life is not just one lifetime, it's many things that in those lifetimes. And when you can bring them all together, and Tchaikovsky was a very complicated man, and even in his music you could hear it, and you can
Yes.
hear the depth. I have a very big book which I love, and it's Gold Edge, and it's all just Tchaikovsky's sonatas and things I used to play. And you can hear it in his music, the complication, the sorrow, and it's there. And when, as you say, when you can go back into your life, previous lifetimes, and you see these different characters in similar fields, because you said film, music, and so that's
Yes.
creativity, that same emotional, and then you, as you said, you can pick it all together and see how it affects you in this way. And with the spiritual, with the monks and all the rest, and it brings in the spirituality. So it's a good way of people seeing that sometimes it's not just one thing that happened in previous life. It's several things that haven't been worked out in those previous lives that come into this life for us to look at and then work through, and it gives us a better understanding, and it gives us a fuller picture of what is making us be the way we are, so that we can correct it. So yes,
Yes.
it was never, my asking was never about, oh, he's famous. No, it's just to show you the different other
Yes.
things. And as you say, Tchaikovsky's was complicated, so many things.
Yes.
And you could say, well, am I like this, or what is that, and what is that? Okay, now I can understand. And it's simply things that we need to work out, understand, so that we can change it and grow and raise that vibration.
Yes, yes, exactly what you are saying is everything that I felt during the last years. And some people ask me, wow, but how it is to be Tchaikovsky or other great personality? And I simply said, listen, when you are under trance, you never think about the fact that you are famous or not. You are simply overwhelmed by your emotional problems and by everything that happened to you. And this life, in particular, this life as Tchaikovsky, was a very, very traumatic one for myself. It was full of sorrow, full of emotional problems, and when it took me a lot of time, it took me months to heal everything, to understand each trauma that happened. It's true that unfortunately I'm also frequently joking about myself, and I'm saying that I'm the nightmare of any therapist. Because unfortunately I have a very slow rhythm of healing myself, because unfortunately I do have problems with forgiveness, and this doesn't help at all as a patient.
No.
So yes, so that's why it took me a lot of
point of view. Yes,
yes.
spiritual point of view, forgiveness is one of the key things.
Yes, it's a
Not
key
just,
and very important thing. Yes, it's essential.
yeah, and not just for forgiving other people, but for forgiving yourself.
Yes,
And
of
it
course.
can be very difficult to forgive even yourself for
Yes.
whatever. And coming back to Tchaikovsky, he was just a man. And in
Yes.
that, being a man, he was a complicated man. And
Yes.
then many of us are complicated, and we need to work through that. And as you said, forgiveness is a thing that works on both for others and for us. And it's
Yes, of
working through
course.
those complications.
Yes, it's very, very important, because I have patients who are very open to the idea of accepting and forgive themselves and people around them. And healing is much easier than it was in my case. So generally it doesn't last so much to work on a past life. It was a special case in my own situation, because it was a life very full of traumas, and because I'm a very difficult patient. But usually you might solve a past life even in 1, 2, or 3 sessions. So it depends on each client's profile, and it depends on the length of the past life, the number of traumas, how deep they are, and so on. So for me, it was difficult. But I want to underline only this thing, that when we are thinking nowadays to someone who lived in the past and who was famous from our own point of view, it doesn't mean that that person felt being famous at the time. For many people, celebrity came at the end of their lives, or even after they were dead. And moreover, even if they had to some extent a success during their lives, all the glamour that we are adding now to their celebrity was not something that they felt during their lifetime. So yes, I never thought that it was something glamorous about being Tchaikovsky or anyone else. And this is why I'm not underlying this idea, but I'm underlying only the fact that our spiritual path is a fascinating thing. And I'm underlying the fact that it's something that each of us can do, not necessarily through regression therapy. There are many therapies. So I'm not particularly advertising any of the existing therapies, because I think that nowadays there is such a large array of therapies, especially for us to be able to find the right chemistry for each of us with a particular person and the particular therapy. And why I think that this happens now in this point of the history of the mankind, because I think that somewhere above in heavens, or in the higher dimensions, in the upper realms, we decided that it's a moment for cleaning up. So I think that all of us, like generally in spring, people start to do a great cleaning in their homes and throw away everything that is not needed anymore. And I think that now, as a mankind, we are in this kind of step where it's so important for each and any of us to clean up from their own past sorrows, emotional blockages, traumas, and so on.
You are absolutely correct. And this is why I've brought this platform, because we are being shaken to awaken to the fact that we are spiritual beings with a physical body having a human experience, and that we are so precious beings, because we are the connection of the Creator, Yahweh, whatever name, that God who created us with unconditional love. So therefore we are this powerful being, and we need to awaken and remember. And many of our prophets, different things, came into this world to make us remember who we are and how powerful we are, and that we don't need to suffer, and we need to let go of these past experiences, because we're holding on. As you have said, Chris, you brought this from lifetime. We've all bringing something that we need to let go, and just remember who we are, and that this canvas that we have called life, we can make it whatever we want to make it. We are the co-creators, but we have all these different baggages that said we can't, it's not possible, because we want to be this, we want to be healthy, but something is still holding us, that we need to say no. It's not, no, this is not me. I am this being from the Creator. Maybe I've done that in the past. That's good. That was interesting. What is it I need to understand? Understand, let it go, and move forward.
Yes, letting go. I think it's the key word for this period of the mankind. So you put it so nicely. I think that's essential to understand. Yes, yes, and what I appreciated in the description of your podcast, and what attracted me so much during my last years, is the idea also of understanding the universe, of having a better and more profound understanding of universe, and not only of our own life here and on planet Earth and so on. Because what I felt extraordinary through past life regressions is that I want to underline the fact that simply seeing the story of a past life is only a part, and a small part, of a regression therapy session. So this is only the beginning. You see who you are, where you lived, what happened, what were the important moments in your past life, and so on. But then the second, and I think the most important part, is the part of healing, when the therapist helps you to see what happened before the moment when you came in that particular past life, what you chose as a life mission, who are the spirits who accompanied you, why you chose to live this or that life experience, what are the exact connections with your current life, and so on. And after so many sessions of during past lives, I think and I feel with all my heart that I gathered so much wisdom and knowledge from all these healing moments, because I received such interesting answers from the world beyond, which made my way of thinking become much broader and much flexible and much open-minded. And now I'm not seeing myself simply as Chris living nowadays in 2026, but I'm seeing myself as a spirit with a very large history, let's say, which has one episode, let's say, of his or her life, because we are both men and women in the same time. And I think that this chance to see a bit of the, let's say, the intimate laboratory where our lives are prepared and carefully carved, was something extraordinary. And I tried to capture in my book many of the things I understood and I saw there. And I also transmitted this in my podcast, Time Traveling, because a lot of people asked me more details about things described in the book. And that's how my podcast was born, trying to develop all the themes approached in the book, and adding more examples, both from Tchaikovsky, but from other lifetime too. Yes, so I think that it's so fascinating to discover everything that is beyond the script of our lives. It's fascinating.
Yeah, you know, and I love what you just said, is that when we look back at our past lives, it's our experiences, and when you look back, it's our experiences, what we have to learn from it, what we need to understand, and what we need to let go, because it is the past. It's happened, it's done, and it has this effect, and it has this effect. Why? So that we can deal with it and let it go, and realize that all this adds to our wealth of knowledge and our wealth of understanding and wisdom, because we are an extension of the Creator, who is feeling everything through us.
Yes.
So when we understand all that we've lived, and you stand back and look at them, it's what you have experienced, what you can feel, what you can really come to terms and understand. And that when you look at another human being who is suffering, you realize, I understand that.
Yes.
How do you think the Creator understands how we feel? because he's in us, he's living it, he's understanding what we go through.
Yes.
And we're an extension of that.
Yes.
And that's
And
all the wisdom and
yes.
knowledge.
Yes.
Gained.
And I also want to underline an important idea here. Well, there are unfortunately still so many conflicts on earth, so many wars, so many stupid problems, and so on. And what I want to say is that, for example, in my case, I was a man, I was a woman, I was Catholic, I was Buddhist, I was part of the Jewish people. Sometime when Moses rised, and so there are some thousands years behind. I always was part of the story in the Palestine when Jesus Christ was there. I was I was almost any religion of this world. I lived on many continents. I was a part of different races, human races, and so on. So all in all, I think that all these conflicts based on the idea of separation, that you are Catholic, I am Jewish, you are a man, I am a woman, and so on, are really absurd and stupid, because all of us were all these categories to some extent at one point of their evolution and in a past life. So I think that one moment we should all stop, simply put our arms, let them drop on earth, and simply make peace all of a sudden, because it's so absurd to have conflicts when last time in the previous life we were Russian, and now we are Americans, and in another life we might be French or German, and so on. So it's really stupid to stick to an identity which changes in the end so fast.
You know something? You're absolutely correct. I did a podcast last week with somebody, and after we had the podcast, we had this, and it was about near-death experiences. And I'm doing a podcast with that too, but with my guest, and we were speaking afterwards, and she said to me, in a previous life, and she's white now, she's Catholic,
Yes.
but she said, in a previous life, I was a black and I was a slave, and I had a sister. And they did something on the plantation, and they had to run away from the head of the plantation, and he was firing a gun, and they had to duck down in the fields, and she didn't, and her sister was beside her, and they were hiding, and when they thought it was quiet, she was saying to her sister, "Oh, we can go now," because her sister was looking at her.
Mm-hmm.
But what she didn't realize, the sister was looking at her, but the sister had been shot and was dead. They were black.
Mm-hmm.
Negroes.
Mm-hmm.
Previous life.
Mm-hmm.
She said she was regressed and she saw it. She's white now,
Mm-hmm.
Catholic. So she says here, and she said and it was the only life she was black. So
Yes.
when you just said, and I was always aware of this is always in my mind, and I travel that road. When you say Russian in a previous life, American now, black, we've lived many lives.
Yes, yes.
We're not always in the same.
No, not at all. We are changing continents,
And
we are changing races, and so on.
I remember reading a book, and in that book it said we have to be so careful, because when we are prejudiced against somebody in this life, you don't know in the next life you will be that race that you were prejudiced against for you to experience.
Yes, yes. And I really saw this on my own history or on my clients' history. Yes, it happens so frequently to switch places. Switching places is so often, because
Yes.
it's not the idea
Experience.
it's not the idea of karma seen as revenge, but it's the idea of really understanding the other. Because what the divine told me, and I wrote this in my book, was you never understand the other one up to the moment when you are in his or her own shoes.
Thank you.
So
We are co-creators.
Yes.
So whatever we do, we must experience our own creation.
Yes.
And therefore, if we've created something in this lifetime, and you know, I've even got, I even had somebody that I knew, and they were telling me about their previous lifetime, and in this lifetime they got so many illnesses and so. But she said to me, different culture. In a previous lifetime, she was a Red Indian chief, and she said she was horrible. She was so wicked.
Yeah.
And she said in this lifetime, she's suffering.
Yes.
And she's not a Red Indian or an Indian this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, when you read widely and you have an open mind, and when you sit down and you realize that the Creator created all of us. And even in the Bible, when they crossed the river, you know, when the Israelites crossed the river and the Egyptians all died. And I remember them saying, you know, God said, do not rejoice because they are my people too. I actually went to the Bible and looked it up, and it is there. God said, do not rejoice because they are my people too. Heaven, the angels were rejoicing when the Jews crossed over and these others died. But he said, do not rejoice. They are my people too.
Yes, of course. Yes. So and I noticed something very interesting. I don't know if you noticed it too. During the last years, the rhythm in which let's say this karma, but I repeat it not as a revenge, but as a reaction to our actions, went faster and faster. It happened to me one day to have only a thought in my mind, which was not materialized. And in the second day, I received an answer from the world above, showing me that I was wrong. I was completely wrong. And I think that nowadays, karma is very, very fast in making us understand where we are mistaken.
Yeah. Because before it was giving us time to change, not anymore. It's not coming anymore. Very quickly. It's coming very quickly. Things have been changed. Now things are coming quickly. So we need to really take on board that the Creator created us all. We're all connected, not just as human beings, animals as well, plants as well, to respect, to honor.
Yes.
We've got to wake up. And when we can understand that, it has a ripple effect. So this greed, this is mine, I want it, you're inferior, you're no.
Yes, and the ego, unfortunately, ego which makes us say, I want this. This is my own opinion, and I think it's something that harms us and the people around us a lot.
Yeah. No, we really have to wake up. So, Chris, this has been lovely. We could go on and on and on.
Yes, I feel it too.
Now, you've spoken about your book. Are you doing any retreats? Are you doing courses? How can people connect with you?
Yes, so thank you for asking. I have an author website, chrisnielsenbooks.com, where people can also see a few free chapters from my book, Being Piotr Ilyich, if they are eager to discover what I wrote there. And I also have my time traveling podcast, which is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And you will find on my website the links to my episodes. It's a 50 episodes podcast. Now we are at the middle of making it publicly, let's say. We are at episode 25. And of course, that I have also social media pages, Facebook and Instagram. So if people want to find me on my author website, chrisnielsenbooks.com, it's the perfect place to find all the important resources connected with my book or with my podcast. For the time being, I'm not doing retreats, but I'm looking forward to approach this topic too. I just, let's say, kept on making people find out about my book, and this was my main let's say purpose during the last years, but I'm going to develop some courses in the next years.
Oh, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So Chris, before we say thank you, and could you leave the viewers with a golden nugget or two of advice?
Oh my God. It's great that you are asking me, but I'm always trying to be humble because I'm very aware of the great creation of the divine, and I think that all the time we see just a small part of it. So this is why I'm reluctant to saying that I'm giving advices to other people, but I just try to say that I would like people to be more present and happier in their lives. And for doing this, I think that they should make this practice, let's say, choose a day of the week and simply stop each 10 minutes and ask yourself, why am I doing this or that action? Is it really something that I like and I want, or is something that my family taught me, or am I imitating a particular behavior that I saw in my childhood, or maybe it's the society which made me thought that this or that is important. So my advice would be, try to be true to yourself. Ask yourself one day from 10 to 10 minutes if your thoughts or actions are really yours, or it's something that you simply inherited from your family or from the society. And in this way, I think that you would start becoming more and more authentic, and you should start feeling your inner spiritual essence more. And in this way, you will start to live a life with more full of meaning. And this is my advice for anyone. Try to give important meaning to your life. And when I'm saying this, is not to do something great, to build the important buildings, monuments, and so on, but to really honor, as you said earlier, honor your presence and the other person's presence. Be alive and be true to yourself. I think this would be my, let's say, piece of advice.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, to be true to yourself and look at what you do each day. Take time out. That is this really what you want, or are you doing it to please somebody else or your family? Because this is about your life. What's right with you? You've got to connect inwardly and do what's right for you, not what's right for somebody else. Because when you do what's right for you, ultimately, if you're connecting to your inner power, which is connected to the creator, it will be right for somebody else. So for now, thank you everyone for tuning in. I know you've enjoyed this podcast with Chris Nielsen in Romania. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story.
It was an honor.
Bye for now. Until the next time. Bye-bye.